Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone. Well, today the Trump administration gave indication that it was going to be rescinding the controversial bathroom bill that Barack Obama had enacted during his tenure. This was a bill that required public schools to adopt a situation where students were allowed to choose whichever bathroom or changing room, etc. they wanted to go into based on how they self-identified, what sex they self-identified as. Obviously, today there are all sorts of very loud and vocal and militant lobby groups who are now screaming about this and crying foul and claiming this is some sort of repressive and regressive move. But in actual fact, I think when you look at the facts, this is actually a very forward-thinking and prudential decision to actually rescind this bill and say we've got to find other ways of addressing this situation. In this video, I want to give you 4 reasons why the Trump administration's decision is actually the right decision. First of all, there is the simple fact that this is a totally unscientific premise. There is no scientific basis for the claim that there are multiple human sexes. We are a sexually dimorphic species. What that means is we only have 2, male and female. That is it. Anybody else who's claiming that there are other sexes, that there are multiple sexes, that there are up to 50 different genders, these are non-scientific and nonsensical claims, especially when you look at some of the descriptions of what supposedly counts as a gender. The simple fact is that we are a species. You look at our reproduction, the way we reproduce. In order to produce new human beings, you have to put a male and a female together. There is no other sex that can be brought into that mix. There is no other combination because we only have male and female. That's the 2 sexes that we have. The idea that your sex resides in your mind and has nothing to do with your body is a highly controversial issue, and like I said, it doesn't have a basis in science. Now, some people try and bring up the experience of people, the minority of people who experience what are called intersex conditions. But intersex conditions are not separate genders. They are not brand new sexes. They are situations. There's 4 different categories of intersex condition. 2 of the intersex conditions, in fact, are called syndromes because they present serious risks or physical defect to the people who experience them. But the important thing is they are not new sexes. This is a situation where someone is either a male or a female and they have experienced some sort of defect or dysfunction in their physiology which has prevented their maleness or their femaleness from expressing itself fully. But what they are not experiencing is some 3rd, 4th, 5th, or depending on the Tumblr list you follow, I think it's even up to 50 different genders or sexes that are being claimed now. This is simply not a scientifically valid claim, and so it's absurd to have a law that effectively flies in the face of what is science and scientific reality. The second problem with this bill are the glaring logical flaws, and in fact, not just flaws, but this is an argument, an ideology which is logically self-refuting. It refutes itself, and yet they've based an entire law on an ideology that is self-refuting. Just consider what this ideology proposes. What it suggests is that your body is not actually what determines your sex. Instead, what determines what sex you are is how you feel psychologically about yourself. So you can have the body of a male, but in actual fact, if you believe that you're female, then that is what determines your sex. You are indeed a female if you simply believe you're a female. So in other words, your sex has nothing to do with your body. But if that is true, then why is it that when people change their sex, they undergo changes to their body? Even if these are only mild, they might change the way they appear. They might go the next step and take certain treatments in order to reduce male characteristics and increase female characteristics, bodily characteristics. Or they might even go the whole hog and have actual surgery to transition from a male body to a female body or a female body to a male body. But here's the point. If sex exists solely in the mind, it's all about the mind and your body has nothing to do with it, why do you need to undergo those physical changes? If sex and gender truly have nothing to do with the body, then a scalpel, a surgeon, hormone treatments, changing the way you look, cannot do anything to adjust your sex. So why do people do these things? It's a logical contradiction to suggest on the one hand that your body has nothing to do with sex, and on the other hand say that people would undergo changes or would go about changing their body in order to be part, or as part of a process of changing their sex. It really is quite an absurd proposition in that regard. Then there is the fact that we don't actually treat other forms of body dysphoria in this way. So the most common one probably are eating disorders, for example, like anorexia, where people have a disconnect between their mind and their mind tells them that their body is not the way that it should be. Their mind tells them that even though they might be healthy, even though they might be woefully underweight, their mind still tells them that they are obese and overweight or unhealthy, that they look unacceptable, and they need to do dangerous things like starvation and other forms of excessive dieting in order to try and cure or fix what they perceive or their mind perceives to be a bodily problem. We don't tell people with anorexia that that's good because your mind is correct and what it's telling you about your body is true and good. So why is it that we would do the same thing to people who experience gender identity disorder, where their mind tells them that there's something wrong with their body? Another obvious form, but not as common, obviously a very small minority of people, is what is known as species dysphoria. This is human beings who experience a psychological belief that they're not really human, that they are another species. Obviously it's very rare, but it's something that affects a certain percentage of the population. There's no way that we would be, or I hope we wouldn't, ever be encouraging people to say, you know what, in actual fact, you're right, your mind is correct, you are in fact a cat or a chicken or a dog or whatever it is that you believe yourself to be, despite the fact that your biology is quite clearly human. You have a human body, you have human DNA, etc., etc. And then there is the condition known as apotemnophilia. Now, apotemnophilia is a situation a very tragic situation, where people actually believe that they have limbs that they shouldn't have, or they believe that they should have been born disabled when they are fully able-bodied. In extreme cases, people will even try and seek out amputations. They might believe that they shouldn't have their arm, for example, that this was a mistake. They don't believe this arm should be there, they were born wrong. Others might try and seek out ways of living out the lifestyle or the experience, the life experience of someone who experiences physical disability. Why? Because their mind is confused. They have a serious body dysphoria, they have a serious identity confusion issue, and their mind is telling them something that is not true about their body. Once again, we wouldn't tell people to embrace that and to start chopping off limbs. So why is it then that we would tell people to do exactly this? We would actually cheerlead people who go to the extreme of chopping off appendages in sex change operations, and we cheerlead that on and we say that that's a good thing to be doing. Why? Because we tell them that in actual fact, if their mind tells them something, then it must be real. The simple point is this: your mind, your psychology does not make reality, and we know this. We tell this to people who experience anxiety and depression all the time. We say to them, it's okay. You might be in a very difficult and dark place right now, but we're here for you. What can we do to help you and walk with you through this? Because your mind is not actually telling you the truth. Your life does matter. Your life is worth living. There are things that are actually worth experiencing and clinging onto in this life. Your mind does not make reality. So why would we tell people when it comes to clearly what is an attempt to override basic biological science, and their mind is trying to tell them that they are a different sex to what they are, that we would encourage these people to embrace this sort of body dysphoria? The third reason why this bathroom bill was so problematic and why it needed to be rescinded was because it was a classic example of imposing ideology upon young people. Young people, obviously, and children are experiencing developmental changes. They are undergoing some very important developmental stages in life that are quite pivotal in shaping their identity and their understanding of who they are. Now, it's one thing for a fully grown adult to say, well, I feel like I'm in the wrong body, and therefore I'm going to live my life in a situation where I'm living out the experience of another sex. Now, I would disagree with the person doing that, and I would say, look, I think it would be far better if you actually sought out proper care and counselling and therapy to address what are clearly some very deep-seated psychological identity issues. But at the end of the day, you're a free adult human being, and if you want to choose to live your life that way, then so be it. It's your life, right? It's one thing for an adult to do it. It's another thing altogether to impose this ideology upon young people and upon children, who are particularly vulnerable to erroneous ideas at important and key developmental stages of their life. Just think about how much damage could be done to a young person who embraces this ideology, which has no sound basis in science, which is logically contradictory, and which has caused harm to other people, and they embrace this ideological belief and confusion. It leads to greater problems as they spend years and years trying to deal with the seed of a bad idea, which was originally sown in their life because of laws like these, which try to normalise something that has no sound basis in reality. Now, obviously, that's a big issue, a very big issue. And this bathroom bill effectively did that. It imposes upon young people this notion that this particular ideology, which, as I said, is logically contradictory, has no basis in reality, and which has no sound scientific underpinning, is actually how reality is, that people can actually choose to be a different sex if their psychology tells them that that is the case. And you can imagine all the problems, the flow-on issues that can arise from embracing such a view of the human person. The fourth and final problem with Barack Obama's bathroom bill and why it needed to be rescinded is because of the fact that it puts people in harm's way. Yes, I'm talking about predators who were able to take advantage of this new loophole, whereas previously they hadn't been able to do this, where they could simply walk into any bathroom or any changing room and claim that they identified as a sex other than the one that they clearly biologically are. And if anyone challenged them, they were able to claim that they were being transphobic and somehow bigoted. It also created a situation in which people would have no mental objection to seeing men, for example, constantly walking in and out of female bathrooms, and they would be too afraid to actually challenge that for the fear, once again, of being called transphobic or bigoted for daring to sort of step up and say, hey, where do you think you're going? This creates an ideal, fertile breeding ground for offending and for sexual offenders. People who want to take advantage of any loophole they can to get access to victims. Now, we already know that public toilets and changing rooms are a high-profile target for people who commit sexual offending. They are a prime spot because they are a place where people go to expose themselves in some fashion, whether they're getting changed or they're on a toilet. So it is a place where you can go if you have a sexual deviancy, you are a sexual offender. It is a place where you can go to find potentially ready access to people who will become victims of your offending. We already know that's an issue. It's already been going on for a very long time. So to actually open up things even further and say, you know what, it's actually okay for anybody to walk into any bathroom they want to, regardless of what their biological sex is, you just make it easier for these predators to actually operate and get away with this kind of conduct. Now, before you start screaming at the screen and saying, hold on, Brendan, that's not going to happen, that'll never be an issue. First of all, we have this incident from the University of Toronto where they temporarily suspended their gender-neutral bathroom policy after instigating it, because we had two situations on two separate occasions where males took cell phones into female showers and filmed females. Then we have this rather troubling situation where a man walked into a female locker room at a swimming facility, a public swimming facility in Seattle, and he began to undress. And when he was challenged about what he was doing, he said that the new law entitled him to do this and that they were discriminating against him. Apparently he came back and again when young girls were getting changed into that same restroom. Then we have this particular situation from Toronto where this male sexual offender claimed that he was transgender in order to get access to women and prey on them at two different Toronto shelters for women. Now, he was jailed indefinitely by the judge because he was considered such a serious risk. We have a San Jose sex offender who was wearing fake breasts and a wig, and he was loitering around a woman's restroom. We have another one this time from California, where in Berkeley, the police arrested a man who twice disguised himself as a woman to get inside the University of Berkeley locker room, where he allegedly used his cell phone to photograph women. Then we have this man who was arrested in Virginia for disguising himself as a woman and filming and peeping inside female changing rooms. Then we have this incident, yet again, another man who dressed as a woman and then secretly videotaped females using a department store bathroom. And finally, we have this incident where we have a transgender woman, which is a man who identifies as a woman, who was caught filming in a Target changing room. We shouldn't be surprised by any of these incidents. As I said earlier, it has long been established that sexual predators target public restrooms, public toilets, public changing rooms as places to try and victimize other people and carry out their crimes. So why then would we want to instigate a law that creates a loophole that makes it even easier for sexual predators to actually execute this sexual offending? This makes absolutely no sense. Now, maybe I think about and care about this issue just a little bit more because I've got 4 daughters of my own, and I understand that being females, it can be a little bit more difficult. They have certain risks that my son is not going to have to negotiate or deal with. There's no way I would want my daughters to be going to a school where males could walk into their private toilet or changing spaces on a whim, because I understand that that would actually put my daughters in harm's way. It would put them at greater risk than the current situation where if a male was to try and do that, we would stop and say, where the heck do you think you're going? But these laws remove that prohibition. They remove all inhibitions around this issue, and they create a scenario in which people are too scared to actually speak up because they're afraid of being labelled a bigot or someone who's hateful, simply for asking a very prudent question. Where are you going? Because clearly your biology indicates to me that you shouldn't be in this restroom. Surely that's an important question still to be asking. And that's why we have sexual abuse victim groups who are saying that they oppose these laws. Just listen to this quote from Safe Spaces for Women, which is a survivors network for people who have experienced sexual abuse. Safe Spaces for Women has a strong interest in ensuring that the voices of women who have suffered sexual abuse are heeded when policies are made that may directly affect their physical, emotional and psychological well-being. This includes policies that require educational institutions to admit to female showers, locker rooms and restrooms biological males who identify as female. While Safe Spaces for Women bears no animus towards the transgendered community, it is deeply concerned that survivors of sexual assault are likely to suffer psychological trauma as a result of encountering biological males, even those with entirely innocent intentions, in the traditional safe spaces of women's showers, locker rooms and bathrooms. Now this is actually really important before you say, oh, this is just people with hurt feelings who are getting overly sensitive. A lot of these people, you have to remember, would have been sexually abused or targeted in those same spaces. So why or how is it fair on them to put them in a situation where they feel vulnerable and threatened? We live in a society. We don't just live in a community of transgendered people. There's a very tiny minority of people who are transgendered in our community. They exist alongside the rest of us. It's not just about what they want to see happen and about their dignity. It's about respect for everyone's dignity and concern for all members of our community. And like I said, I think it would be a very difficult and horrible situation to be in if you were a student at a school who'd been the victim of sexual abuse and then you constantly found yourself in fear just because you had to go to the toilet or get changed because of these policies. This makes absolutely no sense, especially when you consider that you can resolve this issue quite simply if you truly are as committed to this as you claim, by instituting unisex cubicles, single-use cubicles, where you have a locked door, only one person can use the cubicle at a time, but it's unisex. So anyone, regardless of how they identify themselves, can go in and use that cubicle, and they can use it in total privacy without impinging upon anyone else and without putting themselves in harm's way if they feel that would be an issue for them. So there's absolutely no need, when you think about it, to have a bill that forces schools and other institutions to allow people to enter bathrooms just because they feel a certain way. Then there's this quote from Kenneth V. Lanning, who is a 40-year veteran of law enforcement, including specialising in sex crimes for the FBI, and he says this about this policy. Allowing a man based only on his claim to be a transgendered woman to have unlimited access to women's restrooms, locker rooms, changing rooms, showers, etc. will make it easier for the type of sex offence behaviour previously described to happen to more women and children. Such access would create an additional risk for potential victims in a previously protected setting and a new defence for a wide variety of sexual victimisation. There's simply no way that we can claim that this is a prudent or good idea. It doesn't have a basis in any known legitimate science. It is logically contradictory and it puts people in harm's way. So why, oh why, could anybody be upset with today's move by Trump to rescind this very problematic bill? Like I said, there is an easy way to resolve this problem, and that is to institute unisex single-use cubicles that anyone could use one at a time, and then there would be no issue whatsoever, which means that this bill is totally unnecessary, and it is promoted and driven by nothing more than personal ideology, and that's not how good laws should be made. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on Left Foot Media.